All the people here are very experienced people in different sectors of the real estate industry. We've got developers, mixed-use developers, people who are residential developers, commercial, and also people who are in the professional services as brokers and agents. So I think we'll just, the way I'm going to do this, session is that I'll give everyone a chance to first introduce themselves and speak to the topic. The topic is balancing economic growth and the future of living. And what we're trying to focus on is, will demand for purpose-built high-end and alternative assets increase and thrive in East Africa? Is there enough demand to cater for branded residencies, young person housing? Sometimes people call it student accommodation, but young persons, exclusive high-end apartments, golf estates, vacation homes, and more. So what is the balancing of this growth, and mainly dealing with the living quarters or living spaces. So one of my panelists sent a message that he's lost his voice. So if you see it around, please give it back to him so that he's able to speak. So you will discover who he is when he speaks. So I hope by that time he will have got his voice. So I'll start with the lady, because she's the only lady. I know somebody from the wire will be saying we are not doing enough gender balancing, but I didn't choose who was to speak, so that's the rider that I have. But maybe we can start with Rani, and she'll introduce herself and talk to this topic. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Fiji. So, first of all, my name's Rani Nanji. I'm the executive director at Talisi. So I've been on the Talisi project really since inception. So it's been 10 years, a decade on the project. So I'll talk a little bit about how I think at Talisi we're trying to achieve this balance between economic growth and future of living, and what we believe is the future of living. So for those who don't know it, Talisi is a 400-acre mixed-use, master-planned and controlled development in Limuru, just 20 kilometers from here. We put in the infrastructure as the master developers, and we sell fully serviced plots in the different uses in the different zones to developers to do their schemes within our controls. So contributing to economic growth, we will have put in $40 million of infrastructure investment at the end of this project. Already a substantial amount has been put in. We're also doing our own housing development within Talisi, which also has added to economic growth, jobs, construction, etc. And at the end of the whole development, once all our developers have built up, probably about 60 billion shillings would have gone in, something like $450 million. So it's substantial. In terms of jobs, eventually 15,000 permanent jobs there. Currently, we have something like 6 or 7 construction sites, about 1,000 people working there a day, so including the operational businesses, and eventually 25,000 residents. So really, it's quite, in terms of economic growth, great for the region, well, definitely for the area, Nairobi, and Kenya as a whole. So talking a little bit about future of living. So I Googled what's the future of living, and I got these words that kept coming up: natural, efficient, smart. And really that is something I was thinking that if I Googled that, pre-COVID, 5, 6 years ago, what would those words have been? And I suspect it would have been much more luxurious, more extravagant words coming against that. So I think that the world has changed on what the future of living looks like after COVID. At least that's how we see it. So Tbilisi is a 15-minute city where all your needs that you need to live should be within a walkable or a cyclable area. So we believe that is really the future of living. And Tbilisi was consciously designed to be that. We didn't have the words 15-minute city 8 years ago when we designed it, but that really is what it is. And so shopping, schools, medical care, recreational areas, green areas, all within a walking distance. And that has become very evident as the way that we believe future cities, future living is, particularly over COVID. Over COVID, we had a surge of housing sales. And people really, really could come in and say that we don't want to be living in congested, kind of dirty areas. Clean, green living really is the way to go. One of the other pillars, just to kind of add, that is part of the 15-minute city is to be able to have a diverse range of housing. So anyone can come and rent or live in a 15-minute city. They should be able to afford to rent or live in a 15-minute city. So that actually is one of our underlying pillars or visions at Tbilisi, is to be able to have a range of different house types, and affordability can come into Tbilisi. So currently we have 3 developers, including ourselves. And one is MyShare Developments, and they do a range of housing, ourselves, and then there's Chigwell. And between them, we were going from a 4.95 million shilling house up to a 70 million house. So we're really trying to increase that range or have more within that range, and that really is kind of our vision. So kind of in a nutshell, I think that's how we believe like balancing economic growth and future living works at Tbilisi. We have a long way to go. We have to add a lot more to it, making it smart, like I said, making it more accessible to more people in the market, and really doing much more for climate change within the city. So those are just a few points that I thought I'd ask. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Rani. So next we'll go to Andrea.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Andrei Lyubimov, and I'm in charge of development management at Has Consult, one of the probably oldest and most reputable estate agencies and consulting firms. We do sales and marketing and development management advisory for property developers. It's a pleasure for me to be here and join this esteemed panel to discuss the topic of balancing economic growth and the future of living. But before we look into the future, I'd like to look at the past. And in the recent past, Kenyan property market was defined by the demographics, which showed extreme social split. There was a relatively small number of well-off individuals who could afford relatively any house they want, and the rest of the population who were living on the verge of poverty, and never in their lifetime they could make enough savings to afford a house of their own. But this is now rapidly and steadily changing as the middle class is emerging and growing. We can see more and more, this new generation of young, ambitious, creative, well-educated, highly skilled people coming into the market. They earn decent salaries, successfully run their small businesses, and now they can afford to make enough saving within reasonable amount of time to step on that property ladder. And what matters for these people is affordability, because in order to afford another 1 million shillings of the sales price, they need to spend another 2 or 3 years saving. right? So these people are willing to forego many unnecessary extras, including extra space, and to focus on what's really important for them, which is functionality and the experience. So this defines the trend of smaller properties coming to the market in terms of square footage of actual room size. Because I remember when I first came to Kenya in early 2015, I stayed in an apartment that was, like if you make each room smaller by half, it wouldn't affect functionality at all. So yeah, why spend more money on building these spacious apartments if you can really focus on functionality? And then continuation of this trend is shift from private to shared, whereby all these extras people give up within their private apartments, they still can enjoy as the shared service provided within the apartment block or within the gated community. I also would like to point out and appreciate the effort of developers who now unlocking the lower end of the market, who venture into traditionally low-income areas of Nairobi and deliver, nice looking, decent, yet still affordable housing there, and who include social component. We can see projects coming up with indeed super tiny studios or bedsitters, how we call them, but the quality of finishes is much better. Cost of construction through efficiency and through economy of scale is probably the same, but the social element makes it super attractive because developers introduce like communal backyards, rooftop party space, convenience shopping, laundromats, and things like that. I also wanted to touch on the topic of branded residence, because in Nairobi, the overwhelming majority is properties owned by landlords who rent them out, and only a small percentage of owner-occupiers. And this is a perfect scene for the branded residence market, which is, we already see a couple of successful products in this product range. But what's happening now, and this is fueled by economic growth, because until recently, developers were super cost conscious and they couldn't afford spending extra to achieve the specs set out by the brands. But now people start seeing that by paying this premium, they unlock access to much more, to the tenants of higher quality. They achieve better occupancies. They achieve much shorter vacancy periods, and all this is in addition to average like 30% bonus to rental income. Another topic for discussion is branded holiday homes, because until now we do not have a single internationally branded hospitality project on the coast, and I believe there's huge opportunity there. And also local investors are not very accustomed to this idea of rental management, whereby if you buy a holiday home, you are either encouraged or obliged to give it back to the rental pool. And this is now again rapidly changing. People starting to understand this product better. People stop seeing holiday home as a luxury acquisition and start seeing it more of a investment product they acquire. So, and also we already seen at least 3 or 4 successful projects in this tier, non-branded. So once we combine the two, the rental management program of holiday homes and international brand, this will provide huge potential of growth in this year. So, yes, summarizing, I can say that indeed the economic growth defines the future of living. And in order to ride that wave, we need to be conscious about innovation, sustainability, and community building. and this will help all of us to get our products right and make sure that the overall public benefits from what we do as developers in the marketplace. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Andre. I just need to advise my panelists that we've got limited time. So if you ever see me just trying to hold my ear like this, just know it's time up for you. Okay? So,
thanks,
yeah,
Vijay.
just.
So I apologize for my voice. I'm clearly going through puberty right now. But this should help VG's cause because I'll be quick. So my name is Raghav Gandhi. I'm the managing director at Acorn Investment Management Limited, which is a licensed REIT manager. We're currently managing 2 purpose-built student accommodation REITs. Our ethos, our philosophy is centered around providing affordable rental housing, safe, secure housing for the young people of Nairobi and Kenya. And I think this is where I'm gonna, Andre, if you don't mind, take a slightly different perspective than what Andre just spoke about. I agree with Andre that I think the future of living is predicated on the economic profile, but I also believe that it's predicated on the demographic profile of the country, and that's why we focus on providing effective housing, and that's a very key word that I've used, effective housing for the young people of the country. Kenya, I think everyone knows, has a population which is 75% comprised of less than 35-year-olds. Each year you're adding 1 million 18-year-olds to the population pyramid, which means that the way we look at it, if you want to build a kind of a scalable, mass-focused platform, the way to do that, the effective way to do it, is to provide rental housing. Nairobi in itself has about 80 to 85% of the population that rents. If you look at a number of developed markets, particularly Germany and a number of Western European countries, they also have similar trends. The trend of acquiring housing is very much an Anglo-Saxon fallout, which we need to kind of revisit at some point. And so for us, given that we're targeting the youth, where we believe that they don't have the capacity to be able to accumulate the equity over a short period of time to be able to put a down payment down for acquiring a house, when the mortgage market is 40,000 deep, you got to look at some different solutions. And that's why we believe that working with real estate investment trusts that attract patient capital and enable us to provide institutional grade housing is the way to move forward. Aside from that, I think the other future of housing feature is to provide sustainable housing, sustainable developments, because again, that is driven by the demographic profile. The generation that we're catering to think that is very important. We believe that is very important to provide housing in a green, sustainable way. And I think that it's the developers who are able to differentiate themselves in providing such accommodation that will stand themselves out compared to others who choose not to. So I'll just end at that so that I can give other panelists a chance to speak.
Thank you very much. My name is Jason Horsey. I am the Executive Director of Unity Homes. We are a residential developer. We have a little bit over 2,500 homes on build at the moment between a few projects in Tartu City and then through a sister company in Nigeria. We're primarily focused on the middle income segment. However, we are in the process of broadening our portfolio, sort of going up market a little bit. And I just want to touch upon the demand that we're seeing in our segment and then our expectation of future demand. The demand we've seen at the moment has been what we can only describe as very, very stable. And this is in spite of all the issues we've had in the world. There's obviously increasing interest rates, increasing inflation, capital flight out of the country. And these are afflictions affecting all the emerging markets. But I think, all things considered, Kenya's not in such a bad situation if you compare us to a lot of other emerging markets. That said, obviously, if there is any downturn, we would react accordingly. But so far, we're very optimistic. And then if we look a little bit further into the future, we are very, very bullish on Kenya. There's a number of tailwinds, and obviously Raghav just spoke to some of them. There's the usual narrative of young, rapidly urbanizing population with a big housing shortfall. However, there's also somewhat more nuanced tailwinds, which are certainly not in the public discourse, or you don't hear about them very often. And I want to reference a book from Charlie Robertson. Charlie is the chief economist at Renaissance Capital, and he wrote a book called The Time-Traveling Economist. I'd highly recommend everyone to read it. It certainly paints the future of Kenya in a very positive light. Anyway, so he looks at 3 variables that are key in driving economies, in his words, in industrialization, essentially through sustained periods of economic growth, basically becoming more prosperous. And I want to touch upon 2 of them because they're more related to real estate and they're very interrelated to one another. So firstly, he looks at education levels. So he looks at a literacy rate of above 70%, heading to 80% being the sort of sweet spot for industrialization. And then as a result of sort of higher education levels, people have fewer children. So he looks at a fertility rate of below 3, trending towards 2. So now in Kenya, we are, at the moment, we've got a literacy rate of about 85%, and we have a fertility rate of a little bit over 3. But if you look at, so if you look at going back in history, we had a fertility rate of 8 in the 1970s. So the trajectory is very, very positive for Kenya. Now what happens when you have fewer children? Historically, your children are your savings. So when you're having fewer children, the savings in the economy goes up, and then all else equal, the cost of capital should come down. So as the cost of capital comes down, asset prices go up, and then obviously the corollary to that is mortgages become more ubiquitous as well. So now if you overlay the fact that in Kenya, the retail investor is somewhat starved of investment choices, so the go-to investment is real estate, I think this bodes extremely well for the future of Kenya, and we're very, very optimistic and cut across all the segments of real estate. Just to touch upon what Raghav said, we actually share the same sentiment on home ownership, actually, and I don't want to sound like we're sort of denigrating home ownership, but we're of the view government policy should be providing excellent quality homes. Who owns the asset is actually irrelevant. The market here is a buy-to-rent market, so we should just enable that. And you're right, these are sort of government policies from after World War II, and like everyone wants to own a home. It's a very emotional thing, but as I said, our view is the ownership of the asset is irrelevant. It's providing good quality homes, and that's ultimately what we're about.
Hello, is that on? Yeah, so my name's Tarquin Gross. I'm head of residential agency at Knight Frank Kenya. Slightly different to everyone else. I probably focus a lot more on the prime resi market in Kenya and looking at what trends we're having. I think on the sort of higher end market, it's actually we're finding that we've got a severe lack of good quality stock, something that Kenya probably hasn't really been concerned about for a long time, but definitely with more and more organizations moving to Kenya with a lot more higher net worth individuals in Kenya as well, and being a hub, we're seeing not only a bigger buying pool of people looking for good quality stock, but also a rental pool. And with the exchange rate changing, it's actually meaning that we're getting a lot of foreign buyers into Kenya. A huge, a large percentage of the people buying in Kenya are foreigners. And so in terms of what's happening in the economy in Kenya, we're sort of not being affected as much just purely because of that external interest. That being said, I think what's the future? It has to be affordability in financing. It has to be the ability for people to buy. And I think until Kenya finds a way of making mortgages more affordable, it's going to be incredibly difficult for more and more people to buy, and I think the buy-to-let will be the model that we'll see. But it would be definitely, with the lack of housing and, more and more people renting, I know that the desire is to try and get people, especially developers, and there's many up here today, will say that, if the mortgage rates were more affordable, then we'd see a huge number more people, buying. I think generally, as we move on and where we're going, I think the economy is only going to get better in Kenya. I think also over the last 3 years, from COVID to election, we haven't seen developments coming on, and so as better developments come on, we're going to see a better buying pool, we're going to see more people coming on, and hopefully that will also mean more transactions with more property coming on, and then more affordability. So ultimately, there's a twofold, which is making it more affordable for people to buy, but also with more stock coming on at better prices, we should then see, more ownership, is my hope anyway. But, I think you want to do a Q&A at the end, so happy to answer anything at the end.
Okay, thank you. Go to Jonathan, and I've given Jonathan a stern warning, so you remember.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Tarquin. That was quite a good introduction about need for higher quality residential in Nairobi. I'm the chairman of Lordship Africa, and our largest project at the moment is 88 Nairobi, which is here in the Westlands, and that is going to be the tallest high-end residential building in Africa. We're at 47 floors, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen it. We've gone and put a big sign up on the top of it, so it's well visible. And that is going to be, it's something that has really grown here. And I think, Rani sort of mentioned that during COVID, one looked at how we can have within one development everything from playing, working, and being able to enjoy your living style. So we have created something like a 5-star hotel, facilities. It's got all the facilities you'd imagine. It's 300 apartments in the building, and we have something like 4,000 square meters of amenity space there as well. So, and we've gone for this idea of getting smaller apartments. That you were talking earlier, Andrea. We have smaller apartments, but we have a lot of amenity space. So we have 300 apartments. We're selling very well. We're halfway through our construction. We have 120 sold, and we're still selling 2 to 5 a month. Not as much as I would like. I think the economy is not as good as it was, but we certainly, and because in Kenya we all know that there's been a lot of investments that people have made into projects which didn't quite turn out the way they expected it. We really hope to change that. I've been in real estate all my life. I'm a Kenyan. I was born here, but I did my main businesses in Czechoslovakia. I built there over 6 million square feet of space. So we have a lot of experience in development, and we've done a very successful one so far, which is Karen Hills, but it wasn't much actual construction. But this 88 is not the biggest project I've done, but it's certainly the tallest. I think in terms of the subject matter, which is the question of balancing economic growth, a quick little bit of research I did was McKinsey's put out a report a few years ago, which was on this subject, and it was quite interesting. They were saying that for balanced economic growth, we've really got to have inclusion and sustainability included with growth. Growth by itself helps us to have better prosperity. The big measure of that is life satisfaction. Are we getting a better satisfaction in life through economic growth? But that doesn't work if you don't. It doesn't balance if you don't have inclusion and sustainability. Inclusion, it really means making sure that we have better equality of living standards, that we narrow the gap of inequality. And that's really important to balance the the economy and the growth of it, and then sustainability. And we all know that sustainability is super important for the future. I was reading yesterday that it was reported that the world climate was going to really suffer if the ocean temperatures increased by 1.5 degrees. And they predicted it was going to be in 2050. The prediction in the report that came out yesterday was it's in 2030. That's so close, and that's going to have a major impact. And so for sustainability, it's super important for all of us, for a balanced economic growth. But there's huge investment in that. So there's a lot of investment into sustainability. That's in energy conservation, and then there's also a lot of investment in inclusivity. That's in medical standards, teaching, and of course housing, improving housing, good quality housing, which we've talked about here. So there's a lot of investment that goes into that. So to have a good balanced economic growth for the future of housing, we should really have inclusion and sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, for that, your viewpoint, and also bringing in the issue of sustainability, which is now becoming quite an important topic. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the time for questions, and then after that we'll have a wrap-up. So if we have questions, please make the questions precise, introduce yourself, and know that if you have to speak too long, you'll be blamed for delaying everyone for lunch. It won't be me.
Hello, my name is Fahim Bekele. I'm with DLR Group Architects. My question is, I think in terms of the future, it's very hard to do things without government. And in Kenya and all across the continent, there are, maybe we can call them institutional voids. I'm just wondering to the developers, do you think it's feasible that now developers should just think of ways to fill those voids, because probably we won't see government catching up to fill them up in time for what's needed? Are there any ways that developers can fill the voids? My question.
Okay, I think what I'll do is that if there's any developer here who would like to respond, maybe Rane, and maybe one other person who would like to give a different opinion on that, and then it'll be good to answer that question.
Thanks for the question. I mean, I think in a way we all do it. Yeah, we all have, each of these developers as well as Talisi, we all have the standards that we need to reach. And those standards are actually the market-driven. They're market-driven. So, for example, I'll give a simple example at Talisi. You know, we wouldn't exist as a development if the government was doing their job, right? Really, there would be no need for us. The idea is that we're actually putting in controls on development, zoning, etc., which actually all cities do. But really, we're actually, you know, very precise in what we do, and people feel comfortable that actually we're going to go ahead and keep that going into eternity, so that these cities actually thrive. So in a way, I think that we are supplementing what the government is doing or not doing by some of the controls that we put in place, and I'm sure other developers are in their own way are doing that, and it's, in my view, very market-driven.
Yeah. Is there any other person who would like to respond, a different viewpoint on that?
Yeah, I mean, I would totally agree with you. It's setting examples and setting a sample, actually, of what good quality is. Unfortunately, the standards in Kenya haven't really grown and haven't really developed to what we really should be building to these days. We're actually building to European standards, so just to make sure that we really help to increase the standards within Kenya, it's important. And I think those like Talisi and Tatu City are doing an amazing job of actually showing how to develop towns, and good planning is really, really important. And as a result, it's a great success. So yes, developers are trying to do it and trying to set a sample, but at the end of the day, we need to drag the politicians with us.
Thank you very much for that response. Do we have anybody else who would like to ask a question? I think I've got, yes, Kevin, and then three questions, and then we can wrap it up.
Two questions, if you don't mind, very quick. One is the metrics. I mean, you spoke about foreigners buying in the market. Can you give us a sense of metric, source market, where they're coming from, and what are the numbers, plus, minus? And then second one, when we talk about living, obviously we're talking about Nairobi, but lately I'm hearing Diani Beach. How does that, we've seen in other markets, South Africa, people from Joburg migrating into Cape Town, in France, from Paris to Normandy. Do you see that as well as a possibility to Diani?
Could we just get the three questions and then we will get the response. So, yeah.
Not sure I'll remember anymore.
You're a young man, you will remember.
Hello, hi everybody. Appreciate everybody's comments. My name is Inke Mwamibu. I'm actually from the part of the World Bank group that provides political risk insurance, MIGA. Really appreciated, given the topic future of living, your comment regarding sustainability being key. I'm just wondering across the group of developers, how mainstream now is the sustainability measure, given increased stakeholders, financial institutions, as well as shareholders, focusing on reducing carbon footprints, increased sustainability, conservation, and there is an increased cost, but obviously there is savings at the end of the day and increased resilience in your assets. How mainstream is that, and how important is it now in your bottom line? Thank you.
Final question.
Thank you. My name is Shira. I'm with Mivida Actus. My question is more for Raghav. Sorry to put you on the spot with your voice. But just if you could just give us direction or talk more on the synergies between capital markets and real estate and the opportunities that are have not really been tapped into, particularly in this market, that would really drive economic growth.
I'll just allow one more question. I can see my fellow director at KPDA, so I don't want to be on the wrong side of his. Michael.
Yeah, my name is Michael Canu. Just a quick question. How viable will be another Tilisi or Day2 City be in 2023? Your thoughts on that?
So, we've got 4 questions. Let me start with Taquin, because he says he might forget the questions. And then after that, we'll Raghav and maybe Jason, you can talk about something about sustainability and things like that, and then Rani.
So I think the question was about the foreign ownership, foreign buyers in Kenya. I think ultimately the drive has been, we've seen a big change come the change of the year into 2023, and what's driven that is, I think there was a big, COVID's killed the market, made us really slow, nothing was really transacting. Then we had the election, which gave a lot of uncertainty. People weren't quite sure what was going to happen. And also a lot of foreigners left the country. Multinationals were moving their people out of the country, expecting quite a bad election, and it was a lot calmer, a lot better than anyone could have expected. And what's happened is, come the new year, a lot of those people are moving back, and they're looking at Kenya more long term. So generally, the foreign buyers is actually a second homes market, so it sort of ties into your Diani as well, which is my biggest year last year was on sales on the coast. A coastal region where nothing's happened or transacted heavily for 5 years, suddenly last year was a very, very good market for me. And that was purely because people wanted second homes, they could work away, they didn't need to be going into the office every day, and that there was a huge desire to see Kenya as a more stable country, especially showing how we came out of the election. In terms of metric, I think the other, well, in terms of like giving precise numbers, we can talk about later, but The other driving force is the exchange rate. With if people buying in dollars, pounds, euros, the shilling is depreciating quite rapidly, and so we're suddenly very affordable for anyone buying. So if you're looking at a second home, or you're even moving to Kenya for a 5-year period, depending on what your stay would be, it's cheaper. It's cheaper to buy. Rental, your rentals for foreigners are in dollars. It's expensive, but you can actually get a foreign mortgage at a pretty good rate, and so it's making more sense to buy. So that's kind of what's driving the foreign market.
Okay, just what I would like that as everyone answer the question, you say your part in short, so that we wrap up.
I'll address the Diani thing. Yeah, obviously, maybe at the sort of higher end, and maybe at the margin, there's demand in Diani. What we look at, so we did our first development in El Doret. So we didn't know what we were doing. We were sort of shooting in the dark a little bit. But then when we moved to Nairobi, we realized the concentration of wealth, possibly not even just Nairobi, Kenya, but the whole of East Africa is in Nairobi. And as we've said, the market here is very much an investor-driven market. So so from our own perspective, we could probably do another 10 projects in and around Nairobi before we consider moving anywhere else, and obviously that includes Diani. That being said, Centum have obviously got a big development in Vipingo. I believe it's reasonably successful, but certainly if you're looking at mass development, large-scale developers, it's definitely in Nairobi.
I know this was you. Hi, can you hear me? So I'll take your sustainability question as well. For us, it's extremely mainstream. We actually took a call to get a sustainability rating for the REITs that we launched. So both of them are part of this certification by GRISP, which is this global benchmark. Sorry. They've been very well rated. They're top rated in Africa, and they do well within their global peer group. We launch a sustainability report. We are rolling out solar panels across all our properties. They're all IFC Edge rated, and we're actually now going beyond even green, and we're focusing on the social element as well. So in fact, we're working with APSA, who we've recently received a facility from, where we're looking at a social categorization for that loan as well. So for us, it's extremely important, and it's something that we value deeply as part of our model. Sorry. On your question about the interplay with capital markets, I think it's been a challenge, but it's actually worked out really well for us. And I don't know if that's also to do with the economic circumstances. We endured COVID. The last 2 years have been pretty soft as well. And that has also led to a number of challenges for pension funds with their real estate holdings. And I think when we've come in, we've provided this kind of regulated framework with a lot of transparency, enabling pension funds, institutional investors to be able to invest with us in something that's very visible and tangible. And so, the funds, you can go visit the assets, you can go touch them, feel them. So it's not, we're not, I think what's also helped us is that we're not seeking money to develop something, we're essentially seeking money for something that's already there. In that sense, we're actually just going through a supplementary offer right now. Till date, we have raised about over $50 million. We're arguably the most successful issuer of alternative investments in Kenya's capital markets. So I think, but it's required a lot of work, a lot of patience. It's required a lot of market education as well. So, my friends at API giving me the forum to speak like this, even when I can't speak, is very helpful.
Thank you very much. I think, Randy, were you going to say something? Or? Were you good? Yeah, Andre?
Yeah, I'd like to add on the sustainability question, because on top of all these things that have been mentioned 1,000 times in this forum, one important thing is that it gives us some sort of standards and guidelines to work towards, because Kenyan building code is super outdated and very fragmented, to say the least. But we can take Edge user's manual, for example, and this will give us very good framework for us to instruct our consultants, architects, engineers, contractors, and explain to ourselves what we want to build and how it's supposed to look like and how efficient it's going to be and how energy efficient it's going to be and how cost effective it will be to operate later on. And little comment on developing outside of Nairobi. As as the government is making continuous effort in investing and upgrading the infrastructure, this inevitably unlocks the country as a whole, and this brings, first of all, satellite cities, gives additional growth booster to satellite cities. So I would look for places like Machakos, Thika, Limuru, Angacharangai, Kiserian, Naivasha, Nakuru, and then on a wider range, Kisumu, obviously, and that part of the coast between Mombasa and Malindi with the new road upgrade. That's another hotspot for growth.
Thank you, Andre. Maybe we could get you to answer any of the questions and your parting shot.
Okay, great. Thanks, Vijay. So to your sustainability question, what we find in our housing development, Talisi Views, more and more so, actually our end buyers are asking us what we're doing for sustainability. So for us, it really does hit the bottom line right at the start, right? And you know, whilst we're doing quite a lot on sustainability and generating power through solar, that's our plan, and recycling water and the amount of it, all that is in progress, but I'm sure in time there'll be a lot more. So really it's trying to keep up with that, and I think it's a very valid question that is very relevant now. To your question on another Talisi or another Tatu and how viable it is, infrastructure construction is extremely expensive and actually requires a huge amount of patient capital, which is why you don't see Talisis and Tatus across, you know, countries such as, you know, the West. You won't see it because government do that, and that's the reality of it. To find, like, you know, if I ask my board and my shareholders, let's do another Talisi, we're like 70% complete, can we do another Talisi? They will say no, right? Because it is huge amounts of capital and very patient. So yes, there perhaps is a demand, and probably a growing demand, and I think now that we have a couple of these cities, you know, that trend might go on, but for the people who are actually putting in the capital, it's a huge amount to ask for. So I mean, I think that's kind of where I'd leave it. I think from a market perspective, yes, I think there will be, but I'm not sure whether there are that deep pockets available. So it's private money anyway. I think my parting shot would be, you know, the future of living is really, like, we do really definitely need to think about it, consciously think about it, and not just kind of tick the boxes. Sustainability, inclusion, and really, you know, really thinking about what we think is future of living and try and implement it in our developments. You know, I think that's really important.
Thank you very much. I know the MC's looking at me, but I just need to let Jonathan just say his parting shot, or what just to wrap up everything, and then we can go to lunch after that. Yeah. Do you got anything to say? Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I think, you know, this has been a great opportunity to look at how housing is developing and going forward. There are a lot of, there's certainly opportunity, there's a demand, there's opportunity, but it's for equity investors, it's a huge cost. And I totally agree with with what you were saying, Rene, on in regards to Talisi and projects like that, and even 88 Nairobi. The amount of capital you have to put in and everything is huge, and your return on investment, it's a lot of hard work to go through it. So you have to be a little bit crazy.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to give a round of applause to the panelists. Thank you. This is one of the audience that there was great engagement from them. Thank you very much to all of you for engaging us. I think it was a very engaging discussion. Thank you, MC. Thank you to my panelists for